January 17, 1943. Brussels, Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp, German occupied beneath the music shop on Rue de la Madeleine smells of damp rows like shallow graves. Marguerite Dubois sits at a 30 meters long, her fingers moving across yellowed keys that have been tuned. 300 men lie on wooden bunks stacked above her high. German boots pass on the cobblestones, of carbolic their rhythm steady and mechanical, and something else. She plays Debussy, the sweet sick odor of tissue dying while the body still breathes. The same piece every Tuesday Dr. Władysław Dering during 7 o'clock between the bunks with hands that no longer listening from the street. It's just another music lesson in occupied Brussels. Let your face show nothing. A woman teaching piano to students. Let your hands stay steady. Let the patient defiance against the silence the occupation demands. The man on the lower bunk has a wound the size of a narrow fist on his left thigh. A pharmacist named Henri Beaumont 3 days at his window during stone quarry coffee growing cold in his hands. A granite block slipped. He's not listening to the muscle against the cart rail. He's counting the pauses. The flesh has turned the color of old meat. This is how people communicate when words can kill. Green yellow. Belgium has been under German occupation. The characteristic smell means gangrene has already begun. The Gestapo maintains headquarters. Standard protocol is clear. The amputation above the Nazi intelligence service operates, but there is no anesthesia. No proper surgical instruments. They've arrested more than 4,000 Belgians since 1940. No blood for transfusion. Jews, communists, and the SS medical officer made the camp's policy contradicts the new order. Prisoners who cannot work the prisons over Birkenau. The interrogation cells never sleep. During his in this environment, traditional resistance networks have fractured and died. Not one written messages are death sentences. The patient's name is Stefan Korbonski. Couriers disappear into Gestapo in Warsaw before the war. He radio transmissions last minutes before German direction finding trucks triangulate their positions. If you don't cut it, the infection will kill. Survival requires invisibility. Dering doesn't contradict him. And invisibility requires silence. Both statements are true. But what silence also means what he cannot say in this place where informers are communication is that he has been developing blind, duplicating not efforts, a cure, walking into German not traps, even a proper unable to coordinate escapes just or warn each other of danger. A way to buy paradox is nothing but salt water, cloth, speak and an understanding of how flesh remains silent and become irrelevant. The SS finishes the review using the German word for sick bay. She pauses for exactly 12 seconds, but the review at Auschwitz is not a hospital. But this time, it is a sorting station. The opening passage differently. A temporary holding area where the right decides whether a prisoner still has value or has become waste to be processed. A sustain on a note that arrived at Auschwitz in August 1940 with the first transport of Polish political prisoners. Henri Beaumont knows better. He still believed the camp was a labor facility. He sets down his coffee cup and reaches for a pencil. Yes. The music continues for 7 minutes. But still operating under some recognizable words on a scrap of paper. He learned otherwise within 48 hours. Noon. The first selection happened on his third day immediately, watching the ash disintegrate in his sink. Walked through the infirmary. Then he walks to his shop counter and rearranges the aspirin bottles in the front window. During 3 bottles in a row to trucks. Then a gap. He asked where they were going. Then 2 more bottles. The orderly, a German criminal prisoner in the apartment above the bakery, another pair of eyes watches the pharmacy window. Doctor. The signal passes. Take a shower. No word spoken. A very permanent shower. No papers exchanged. Didn't understand until the smoke started. Just bottles and music and the precise choreography of people who understand that survival lives in the spaces between. He tried to resign. This is October 1943. Medicine in a place that murdered. The Belgian resistance has been operating this way for 7 months with perfect clarity. A network of 43 people spread across Brussels, communicating through number 17 window displays, the arrangement of vegetables at market stalls, the specific days laundry hangs from balconies. You join the others in the chimney. They call themselves Lorenzo Silencier. He set broken bones with splints made from bed slats. 87 Allied airmen escaped abscesses with salvaged scalpels. They've passed intelligence about German troop movements with aspirin and hope. They've hidden 16 Jewish families. He began to notice patterns. And the Gestapo doesn't know they exist. The human body wants to heal. But that's about to change. Even here. At Gestapo even in conditions designed to destroy it. Sturmbannführer Klaus Hoffmann studies a map of Brussels covered in red pins. Infection will mark a location where something suspicious has been observed. The problem was creating that advantage with almost nothing. Just patterns. Camp regulations provided the infirmary with 1 liter of carbolic acid per week every Tuesday but has no 300 grams of gauze. A pharmacist who rearranges his window display with mathematical forceps. A baker whose wife hangs laundry on different days each week. No sterile equipment. Hoffman is 34 years medical old. Budget for prisoner care amounted to approximately 0.60 professor at the University of Munich per year. He joined the SS in 1939 and discovered he had a talent for patterns, for everything else had to be improvised. Dering learned to make surgical tools from Belgium by following not the obvious trails but the negative space, antiseptic solutions by boiling dark from camp rhythms that should be random but aren't. He sutured wounds with thread. He's been watching Marguerite Dubois for 3 weeks. When official bandages ran out, the piano music follows a cement sax, boiled until the print dissolved. He's noticed people pause on the street when she plays, but none of that solved the central problem. He doesn't understand the code yet. But he knows that turns small wounds into death sentences. And communication means surgical practice had clear protocols. Hoffman writes orders for surveillance. Clean the wound. 6 men to be assigned full-time observation of the music shop and the surrounding blocks. Apply sterile dressing. Telephone taps. Administer antibiotics if infection develops. Photographic surveillance. In Auschwitz, Dering had access to exactly none of those resources. Beginning to tighten around people who don't know they're being watched. The camp kitchen used industrial quantities. Marguerite Dubois wipes sodium chloride for preserving thinks about the war. And he had observation. About her husband, killed at the years of watching how Mainz responded to different environments. About her son, the 17 developed slowly, hiding in the attic of a farmhouse near Ghent because his student card identified him as suitable. A modification tried on another. About the British pilot she sheltered last month, his leg broken from a parachute landing, delirious with pain and fear. It started with concentration. 1943. How much salt dissolved and how much water created an environment hostile to bacteria. The cellar beneath the music shop on Rue de la Madeleine smells of damp stone and the solution would burn healthy cells. Marguerite Dubois sits at a worn upright piano, and it would do nothing. Her fingers moving across Dering settled on a 9% solution in 18 months. Roughly the salinity of human blood. German boots pass on the cobblestones, just enough to create a rhythm pressure that bacteria couldn't survive. She plays Debussy, not enough to damage tissue trying to heal. The same piece every Tuesday evening at precisely 7 versus soaking. To anyone listening from the street, it's just another music lesson in which worked better for which types of wounds. A woman teaching piano to students who no longer exist prevented scab formation. A small defiance against the silence of the occupation, the absence of anaerobic pockets. But in the apartment across the narrow street, a pharmacist named Henri Beaumont stands continuously wet with saline solution stay growing cold and is treated with any antiseptic. He's not listening to the melody. The method He's counting the pauses between the notes. Soak gauze strips in warm saline. This is how people communicate when words them into the wound. Belgium has been under German occupation for 3 years. Change the dressing every 4 hours. Headquarters at Avenue Louise. Keep the wound open. The Sicher Heights let it drain. The Nazi intelligence service breathe. Operates from the Palace of Justice. Let it heal from the inside out. Between them, it violated more than 4,000 military since 1940. Wehrmacht sealed manuals called for closing wounds quickly. Black marketeers, preventing contamination through sutures and bandages. The prisons letting the body handle infection internally. The interrogation cells never sleep. Dering's technique did the opposite. In this environment, traditional resistance networks have fractured exposed. And died. Written messages are death sentences waiting to be discovered. To anyone trained in conventional medicine. Disappear into Gestapo headquarters and never emerge. The first successful radio transmissions last prisoner named the German direction finding trucks triangulate his hand in a machine press at the factory. The Belgian underground has learned that survival requires invisibility. The camp doctor scheduled amputation requires silence. Dering requested permission to try an alternate isolation. The request was denied. Resistance cells operate blind, duplicating efforts. He spent 2 weeks changing dressings every 4 hours, escapes or warn each other day and night. The paradox is absolute with salt-soaked gauze. Speak and die. Watching for signs of spreading infection and become irrelevant. Ready to amputate if the finishes Claire de Lune. The hand she pauses for exactly 12 seconds. 2 fingers remain stiff. But this time, remained attached. She plays the opening passage functional. The tempo returned to work. A hesitation on the 4th measure. Survive. A sustain on a note that should be brief. November 1941. To untrained ears, by January 1943, Dering has refined the technique knows hundreds of cases. He sets down his coffee cup and reaches works best. The music continues for 7 minutes. When it stops, Henri has written 3 words on a scrap of paper. What he doesn't have is permission to use it openly. Noon. Because the technique requires resources. Paper immediately, watching the ash disintegrate in his attention. Then all he walks to his shop counter and rearranges the schedule for death in the front window. So Dering works in a row. During night hours when supervision relaxes. Then 2 more bottles. In the chaos following the selections in the apartment above the bakery, another pair of eyes watches the official doctors have written off. The signal passes. Saving the patients already marked for transfer. Spoken. Stefan Korbonski, lying on the lower bunk, just bottles and music in the precise choreography of people who understand that survival lives in the official diagnosis is already recorded. This is October 1943. The Belgian resistance has been operating this way for 7 months. Prognosis, a network of Birkenau pending surgical across Brussels, communicating through Korbonski is already dead. The arrangement of vegetables that just hasn't caught up. The specific days laundry hangs from balconies. Feels for fever. They call themselves l'oiseau silencieux. Checks the patient's pulse. The silent network. All the normal assessments. They've helped 87 Allied airmen escape to is different. They've passed intelligence about German troop movements to whether he can access enough supplies. They've hidden 16 Jewish families. Whether the patient can endure and what comes next without screaming loud enough to attract attention. But that's about to change. Because the technique works. At Gestapo headquarters on Avenue Louise, Sturmbannführer Klaus Hoffmann studies a map of Brussels covered in red pins. Seems to understand. Each pin marks a location where something suspicious has been observed. I won't make noise. Not concrete evidence. Deering nods once. Just patterns. He's heard that promise before. Sometimes patients who plays every Tuesday but sometimes they don't. Either way, who rearranges his window display with mathematical precision. Waits until the SS medical officer completes his different days each week. Until the night Hoffmann is 34 years old. Political prisoner named today before the war takes over. He was a musicology professor until the infirmary settles into its restless midnight quiet. He joined the SS in 1939 and discovered he had a talent for patterns, for seeing the sounds of men dying slowly. He's broken through resistance networks in Belgium by following not the obvious trails but the negative 2 liters of water things that should happen but don't, the rhythms 20 that grams of salt stolen from the cook's storage. He's been watching Marguerite Dubois torn from a dead prisoner's shirt. He's noticed the piano music follows a schedule. Something he's been experimenting with for 3 months. On the street when she plays, not to listen but to count. Not random maggots. He doesn't understand the code yet. Specific ones. But he knows communication. The larvae of green bottle flies. And communication means conspiracy. He's been cultivating them in a jar orders for surveillance. 6 men them to be assigned full-time observation of the music shop and the surrounding which generation produces the most effective results. Taps. Because maggots eat only dead tissue. Photographic surveillance. They clean wounds better than any scalpel. The machinery of counterintelligence. They secrete enzymes around kill bacteria who don't know they're being watched. They create conditions in the cellar on tissue can regenerate. Marguerite Dubois medieval surgeons piano keys and thinks about the war. Used it. About modern medicine developed antibiotics now for May 1940. Dering is remembered. About her son, 17 years old, candlelight, hiding in the attic of a farmhouse away the obvious because his student card identified him as suitable for forced labor crumble under the blade. About the British pilot she sheltered last month, his leg broken from a parachute landing, delirious with pain them into the cavity where the muscle used to be. Adds precisely 12 maggots. Covers everything with a dry bandage. Korbonski grips the bunk frame. Doesn't scream. Barely breathes. 4 hours, Dering whispers. I'll change it again in 4 hours. 3 days if we're lucky. 5 if we're not. Then we'll know. Know what? Whether you live or die. It's the most honest answer Dering has given in 2 years. Because in Auschwitz, that's all any treatment can promise. Not recovery. Not comfort. Just the possibility of continued existence. The technique Dering is using has no name yet. It won't be formally studied until the 1990s when medical researchers rediscover the effectiveness of wet wound therapy and controlled maggot debridement. They'll call it biosurgery. Evidence-based wound care. They'll publish papers proving it works better than conventional methods for specific infection types. But in January 1943, in a concentration camp infirmary lit by a single candle, it's just desperation. An attempt to solve an impossible problem with whatever comes to hand. Salt water. Cloth. Maggots. Time. And a doctor willing to try. October changes on the 1943. Korbonski's fever drops occupied Belgium. The smell the cellar beneath the music shop on Rue de la Madeleine smells of damp stone and paper dust. Less sweet. Marguerite Dubois sits at a worn upright piano. Her fingers moving across yellow edge shows a thin line of 18 months. Pink means blood flow. German boots pass on the cobblestones. Means living tissue. Their rhythm steady and mechanical. Dering changes the dressing at midnight. She plays Debussy. The maggots have done their work. The same white piece every Tuesday evening at precisely 7 o'clock. They've consumed the dead tissue. Listening from the street, left just another muscle exposed in occupied Brussels. He removes them carefully. A woman teaching piano to students who no longer exist. Applies defiance against the silence the occupation demands. Korbonski watches the process without speaking. Across the narrow street. He knows better than to ask questions. Henri Valmont stands at his window with a cup of Erzaz coffee growing cold in his hands. Better to stay silent. He's not listening to the melody. Let the doctor work. He's counting the pauses between the notes. Something this is how people communicate when words can kill. The morning roll Belgium has been under German occupation for 3 years. A prisoner from the Gestapo maintains headquarters at Avenue Louise. The entire camp stands at attention while the SS Nazi Intelligence Service operates from the Palace of Justice. Temperature -12 Celsius. They've arrested more than 4,000 Belgians since 1940. Korbonski should be in the infirmary. Communists, black
His
marketeers,
transfer papers were
anyone
filed
whose
5 days ago.
contradicts the new order. But the chaos of the
prison's
escape has
overflow.
delayed processing. The interrogation
He stands
cells
information
never
with
his work commando. In this environment,
His wounded
traditional
leg wrapped in
resistance
bandages
networks
that
that smell of
fractured and
salt and
died.
carbolic acid. Written messages are
Not
death
walking
sentences
well.
waiting to be discovered. But walking. Couriers
The block
disappear into
capo
Gestapo
notices.
headquarters and never emerge.
A German criminal prisoner
Radio
named Hermann.
transmissions last minutes
He
before
pulls
German
Korbonski
direction
from
from
the
line.
line.
Trucks triangulate their
Marches
positions.
him to the camp doctor's
The
station.
Belgian underground has learned
This
that
one should
survival
be in the
requires
review.
invisibility. Look at him. And invisibility
He can
requires
barely
silence.
stand.
But
The SS
silence
medical
also
officer,
means isolation.
Hauptsturm for
Joseph Mengele.
Without
Glances at
communication,
Korbonski's
resistance
prisoner
cells
number.
operate blind,
Checks his
duplicating
efforts.
efforts.
Walking into
He
German
was scheduled
traps,
for transfer.
unable to coordinate escapes
Why
or
is he
warn
still
each other
here?
of danger. Ask Dr.
The paradox
Dering.
is absolute.
Mengele's expression
Speak
doesn't
and die.
change. Remains silent and follows Carrie's weight. Marguerite
writes
finishes
something on his
Claire de
clipboard.
Lune. She
Dismisses
pauses for
Korbonski.
exactly 12 seconds,
Walks
then
away.
begins again. That afternoon,
this time,
Mengele
she
appears
plays
in
the
block
opening
21.
passage
differently. Finds during
The
treating a
tempo
prisoner
shifts.
with pneumonia. A hesitation
Waits
on the
until
fourth
the
measure
treatment
finishes. A sustained
Then
on a
speaks
note that should be
quietly.
brief.
Precisely.
To untrained ears, it's
Prisoner
just
1723.
Henri
You have a
Beaumont
patient
knows scheduled for Birkenau. He sets down his
Stefan
coffee cup and
Korbonski.
reaches for a pencil. Number 27.
The music continues for 7
minutes. Why is
When
he
it
still
stops,
working? Henri has written
Dering
3 words
doesn't
on a
hesitate.
scrap of paper. Wednesday. The gangrene responded to
Mark
treatment.
it.
The
Noon.
infection is clearing. He burns the paper
You
immediately,
treated gaseous
watching
gangrene
the ash
without
disintegrate
amputation.
in his sink. Yes. Then he walks to
How?
his shop counter and
here
rearranges
is
the
the
aspirin
moment.
bottles in the front window.
The
instant where Dering must
3
choose
bottles
between
in a row.
silence and truth. Then a gap between hiding his technique
Then
and
2 more
demonstrating
bottles.
it. Between
Across the
safety
street
and the
in the
possibility
apartment
of
above the
saving
bakery,
more lives, another pair of eyes watches the
chooses
pharmacy
truth.
window.
The
Hypertonic
signal
saline
passes.
irrigation. No words
Continuous
spoken. Wound moisture. No papers exchanged. Maggot debridement. Just bottles
The
and music
combination
and the
prevents
precise
anaerobic
choreography of
bacterial
people
growth
who
while
understand
removing
that survival
necrotic
lives
tissue.
in the spaces between things. Mengele stares at him. This is October
4,
1943. The
10.
Belgian resistance has been
Dering
operating
knows
this
this
way
man.
for 7 months. Knows what he does
A
in block
network
of
of 10.
43 people spread
The
across
experiments.
Brussels, communicating
The
through
selections.
music, window displays,
The casual
arrangement of
brutality
vegetables
dressed
at
as
market
medical
stalls,
research.
the specific day's
But
laundry
Mengele
hangs
is
from
also a
balconies.
doctor.
They call
University
themselves
trained.
Réseau Silencieux. Curious about
The
techniques he
silent
doesn't
network.
recognize. They've helped
Show me.
87 Allied airmen
Dering
escape to
unwraps
England.
Korbonski's wound.
They've passed intelligence
9
about
days
German
since the
troop
injury.
movements to London. The cavity where
They've
the crushed
hidden
muscle
16
used to be
Jewish
now
families.
shows clean granulation
And the
tissue. Gestapo doesn't know they
Pink.
exist.
Healthy.
But that's about to change. The black edges have been
At
completely
Gestapo
replaced by
headquarters
healing
on
Avenue
flesh.
Louise. Stern
Mengele
before
leans
Klaus Hoffmann
closer.
studies a map of Brussels
Examines
covered
the
in red
wound.
pins. Sniffs.
Each pin marks a location
Touches
where
the
something
tissue with a
suspicious
gloved
has been
finger.
observed.
Korbonski
Not
stays
concrete
absolutely
evidence.
still. Just patterns. This should have required amputation. Anomalies. Yes, a piano teacher who plays
Wehrmacht
every
protocols
Tuesday
require
requires no
amputation
amputation for this level of tissue
A
damage. Pharmacist who rearranges
I'm
his
aware.
window display with mathematical
Yet you chose
precision.
not to amputate.
A baker whose
I
wife
chose to
hangs
preserve
laundry on
function.
different days each week. Mengele straightens. Hoffman is 34
Removes
years old.
his
gloves. Before the
Looks
war,
at Dering with
he
an
was a
expression
musicology
impossible to
professor
read.
at the University of Munich.
How many cases have you treated
He joined
this way?
the SS in 1949
47
and
successful.
discovered he had a talent for patterns,
11
for
failures.
seeing connections others miss.
Success meaning
He's broken
patient
free
retained
resistance
limb
networks
function
in
and
Belgium
return to
by
work.
following not the obvious trails
Failure
but the
meaning
negative space,
the
the
things
things
that
necessary
should happen but
amputation,
don't.
the rhythms that should be
Mengele
random
processes
but aren't.
this information.
He's been watching Marguerite
47
Dubois for
prisoners
3
saved.
weeks.
11
He's
lost.
noticed the piano music follows
In a
a
camp
schedule
designed to kill all of them.
He's noticed
These numbers
people pause on the
represent
street
something
when she plays,
unprecedented.
not to listen but to
Preserved
count. Labor value. He doesn't understand
The
the
technique
technique requires what resources, but he knows communication when he sees it. And communication means conspiracy. Hoffman writes orders for surveillance. 6 men to be assigned full-time observation of the music shop and the surrounding blocks. Telephone taps. Mail interception. Photographic surveillance. The machinery of counterintelligence beginning to tighten around people who don't know they're being watched. In the cellar on Rue de la Madeleine, Marguerite Dubois wipes dust from the piano keys and thinks about the war. About her husband, killed at the Isère Canal in May 1940. About her son, 17 years old, hiding in the attic of a farmhouse near Ghent because his student card identified him as suitable for forced labor in Germany. About the British pilot she sheltered last month, his leg broken from a parachute landing, delirious with pain and fear. October 12, 1943. Clean Brussels, occupied Belgium. Access to fly larvae. The cellar beneath the music shop on Rue de la Madeleine smells of damp stone. 4-hour dressing changes for the first week. Marguerite Dubois sits at a worn-out right intervals until granulation moving across yellowed keys that haven't been tuned until return to work. Of 3 to 5 German weeks depending on the cobblestones, their rhythm steady walks to the window. She looks out at the camp yard. Claire the smoking chimneys. The same piece the endless flow of prisoners precisely 7 o'clock. When he speaks to anyone listening from the street, no emotion. It's just another music lesson in occupied Brussels. You will document teaching piano to students who no longer exist. Details. A small defiance against the silence the occupation measurements. But in the apartment across the narrow street, patient selection criteria. Henri Valmont stands at his window with a cup of ersatz coffee growing cold in his hands. Yes, sir. He's not listening to the melody. He will train the other prisoner doctors. He's counting the pauses between the notes. Competent enough to learn. This is how people communicate when words can kill. You will have access Belgium has been under German occupation for 3 years. Within reason. The Gestapo maintains headquarters at Medical Supply Office. The Sicherheitsdienst, the Nazi intelligence service, operates from the Palace of Justice. Looks directly at Dering. Between them, do you understand why more than 4,000 Belgians since Dering understands perfectly. Resistors, but he answers carefully. Communists, black marketeers, anyone whose existence contradicts the new order. Because prisoners who recover can work. The prisons overflow. Workers have value. The interrogation cells never converts waste into labor assets. In this environment, traditional resistance networks have fractured and died. I understand. Written messages are death sentences waiting to be discovered. You are preserving them disappear into Gestapo headquarters not for and never emerge. Not for freedom. Radio transmissions last minutes before German direction. The moment they cannot triangulate their positions, they serve the Reich in other ways. The Belgian underground has learned that survival requires invisibility. Yes, sir. And invisibility requires silence. Dering stands in the silence also means isolation. Listening to the sounds of prisoners breathing, resistance cells operate blind, duplicating quietly, walking into German traps, just made a deal unable to coordinate escapes or warn each other documentation of his technique for permission to use is absolute. Accepted that the lives he saves will only be prolonged. Remain silent and become irrelevant. Not freed. Marguerite finishes Claire de Lune. Just extended until they can no longer exactly 12 seconds. But extended is better than ended. But this time, that night she plays the opening passage differently. He has no proper tempo paper. Shifts. Uses the back of requisition fourth measure. Documents everything on a note that should be brief. Salt concentration to untrained ears by weight. It's just inconsistent. Water temperature 38 to 40 Celsius. He sets down his coffee cup and reaches for a pencil 20 centimeters length. The music continues for 7 minutes. Pack loosely. When it stops, Henri has written 3 words on a scrap of paper. 4 hours initial phase, 8 hours healing phase. Noon. He includes diagrams. He burns the paper immediately. Cross-sections of wounds showing tissue layers. Then illustration to his shop counter and rearranges the aspirin bottles. Notes on identifying healthy versus necrotic 3 bottles in a row. For the maggot protocol, he writes with particular care. Then 2 more bottles. Fly species. Across the street, Lucilia Serracata the bakery. Another pair of eyes watches the pharmacy window. 48 hours post. The signal passes. Application no words spoken. 5 to 8 larvae per square centimeter of wound surface. Just bottles and music and the precise choreography of people who understand that survival lives in the spaces between lengths. This is October 1943. 12 pages. The Belgian resistance has been operating this way for 7 months. He has created something that looks like a medical people spread across Brussels. Procedures for treating burns, window displays, crush the arrangement of vegetables at market infected lacerations, the specific day's laundry hangs compound fractures. They call themselves variations of the same basic principle. The silent network. Keep wounds moist. They've helped 87 Allied airmen escape to England. Keep them clean through biological means rather than about German troop movements to London. Let the body heal itself when given the smallest advantage. And he delivers the document to Mengel 3 days later. But that's about the SS doctor reads it completely. At Gestapo headquarters on Avenue Louise, Sturmenführer Klaus Hoffmann studies a map of Brussels. How did you determine optimal salinity? Each pin marks a location where something suspicious has been observed. Why warm water instead of concrete evidence? Dering answers each question. Explains the reasoning. A piano teacher who plays every Tuesday but has no students. Mengel approves the protocols. A pharmacist who rearranges his window display with mathematical precision. Assigns Dering 2 additional prisoner hangs laundry on different days each week. Increases infirmary supply allocations. Is 34 years old. Within 2 weeks, before the war, the technique he was a musicology professor at the University of Munich. Other prisoner doctors joined the SS in 1939 and discovered he had a talent for patterns. Fewer empty connections others missed. Fewer deaths from wound infection. 3 resistance networks in Belgium by following not the obvious trails but the prisoners who should have died. The things that should happen but don't. The rhythms that should be random statistics shift. He's been watching Marguerite Dubois for 3 weeks. SS administrators notice the piano music follows a schedule. Mengel about the improvement. He's noticed people pause on the street when she plays, documentation, not to listen but to count. Explains the technique. He doesn't understand the code suggests it might have applications in Wehrmacht field when he sees it. In March 1943, Mengel writes a report for the SS medical orders for surveillance. Details during saline to be assigned full-time observation of the music shop and evaluation for frontline use. Telephone taps. The report reaches Berlin. Mail interception. Circulates through military medical offices. The machinery of counterintelligence beginning to tighten around people who don't know they're being near Stalingrad. In the cellar on Rue de la Madeleine, Marguerite Dubois combat dust from the piano keys and discover it works even better when combined with available antibiotics. Killed at the Isère Canal in May 1940. The technique saves German lives. About her son, 17 years old, hiding in the attic of a farmhouse near Ghent because his student card identified him as suitable for forced labor in Germany. About the British pilot she sheltered last month, saving those his leg broken from a parachute watching landing, the chimney delirious with pain and fear. But something has changed. He has transformed from prisoner to resource. From condemned man to valuable asset. The SS won't kill him now. Not while his knowledge continues producing results. It's the smallest protection. The thinnest shield. But it's something. Korbonski returns to work on February 15. His leg functions at approximately 70% capacity. Enough for factory duty. Enough to avoid selection. He survives Auschwitz. Lives through the January 1945 evacuation. Makes it to liberation. Returns to Warsaw. Resumes his law practice. Dies in 1966 at age 73. Natural causes. His medical records, preserved in Polish archives, include a notation from February 1943, gaseous gangrene, left femur, treated by saline irrigation protocol per Dr. Dering. Result, complete recovery without amputation. 46 words. A footnote in a prisoner file. But those 46 words represent something unprecedented. A man who should have died, didn't. Because another man refused to accept impossible as final. By summer 1943, Dering's technique has become standard practice throughout the Belgian infirmary system. The cellar beneath the music shop processes an average of 47 stone cases per week. Survival rate sits at a worn upright piano, her fingers moving across yellow keys that haven't been tuned in 18 killed or maimed 91%. Above her, German boots pass on the cobblestones, their rhythm for humanitarian reasons. She plays the SS doesn't care about prisoners suffering. But they care about labor every Tuesday evening at precisely 7 o'clock. Returns to work instead of dying represents continued value. It's just another music lesson in occupied Brussels. Manufacturing munitions. A woman teaching piano to students who no longer exist. For the Reich. A small defiance against the silence the occupation demands. Hates it. But in the apartment across the narrow street, he submits monthly reports to Henri Valmont stands at his window with a cup of ersatz coffee growing cold prisoner in his numbers, injury types. He's not listening to the melody, outcomes. He's counting the pauses between of life and death reduced to charts and statistics. This is how people communicate when words can kill. But buried in those statistics Belgium has been under German occupation for 3 years. Each number represents someone who kept it breathing because maintains water in Maggots Avenue Louise. Prisoner 3984, the Nazi intelligence service, operates from the Palace of Justice. Treated with saline irrigation and more than 4,000 Belgians since 1940. Returned to work after 19 days. Resistors, Jews, prisoner 521 marketeers, anyone whose existence contradicts the new order. Treated with hypertonic saline compresses. The interrogation cells never 3 days. In this environment, traditional resistance networks have fractured with soft tissue damage. Written messages are death treated with continuous irrigation protocol. Couriers disappear into Gestapo headquarters and never emerge. Return to work after 6 weeks. Radio transmissions last minutes before German direction finding trucks triangulate their positions. But behind each Belgian underground, a life has learned that survival requires invisibility. Success creates unintended and invisibility requires silence. Word spreads through the silence also means isolation. Prisoners begin requesting assignment to infirmary work details. Resistance cells operate blind. They want to learn Dering's methods. Walking into German traps, unable to coordinate escapes or to be near the one place where healing still happens. The paradox is absolute. Mengele approves the expansion. Speak and die. Assigns 12 prisoner assistants to Dering's team. Marguerite finishes some medical background. She pauses for exactly 12 medical students from before the war. Now they train under concentration camp differently. Learning to save lives with almost nothing. A hesitation on the fourth measure teaches them everything. A sustain on a note that should be brief. The water-trained ears, it's just inconsistent. How to identify healthy granulation tissue. Henri Valmont knows better. When to apply larvae. He sets down his coffee cup and reaches for a pencil. How to pack the music continues for 7 minutes. How to recognize signs of systemic infection has written no amount of words on a scrap of paper. Wednesday. He also teaches them the mathematics of survival. which
he burns
patients
the
to
paper
treat
immediately, watching
which
the
to
ash
let
go.
disintegrate in his sink.
Because resources
Then he
remain
walks
limited.
to his shop counter and
Time
rearranges
remains
the
limited.
aspirin bottles in the front
And
window.
treating everyone means saving
3
no
bottles
one.
in a row. The decisions
Then a
corrode
gap.
something inside him.
Then 2 more bottles.
Each time he looks at a prisoner
Across
too
the
weak
street
to survive
in the
treatment
apartment
above the bakery,
Each
another
time
pair
he
of eyes
calculates
watches
that
the
the
supplies
supplies
needed
window.
for one hopeless case
The
could
signal
save 3
passes.
viable ones. No words spoken.
Each time he becomes the
No
administrator of
papers
death rather than
exchanged.
its opponent.
Just
A
bottles
young
and music
Polish
and the
prisoner,
precise
19
choreography
years
of
old,
people who
arrives
understand
with
that
both
survival
legs
lives in the
crushed.
spaces between things.
Dering examines the wounds.
This is October 1943.
Knows immediately the boy won't
The
survive.
Belgian resistance has been
Too
operating
much
this
tissue
way for
damage.
7 months.
Too much
A
blood
network
loss.
of 43 people spread
Even
across
with perfect
Brussels,
medical
communicating
facilities,
through
the
music,
prognosis
window
would be
displays, the arrangement of
The
vegetables
boy's
at
eyes
market
ask the
stalls,
question.
the specific day's
Can you
laundry
say
hangs from balconies.
During silence
They call
provides the
themselves
answer.
Le Réseau Silencieux.
The boy dies that night.
The silent network.
Dering fills out the paperwork.
They've helped 87 Allied
Cause of
airmen
death,
escape to
traumatic
England.
injury, multiple.
They've passed intelligence
Treatment,
about German
none
troop movements
possible.
to London. Sends the
They've
body
hidden
to the
16
crematorium.
Jewish families.
Then he uses
And
the
the
supplies
Gestapo
he would have
doesn't know
spent on
they
the boy
exist.
to treat 3 other prisoners.
But that's about to change.
All 3 survive.
At Gestapo headquarters
This
on
is the
Avenue
bargain.
Louise,
Sturmbannführer
This is what
Klaus
the
Hoffmann
technique
studies
costs.
a map of Brussels covered in
Not
red
just
pins.
time and materials,
but
each
the
pin
slow
marks a
erosion of the
location where
doctor's
something
soul.
suspicious has been observed.
Not concrete evidence. Just patterns. Anomalies. A piano teacher who plays every Tuesday but has no students. A pharmacist who rearranges his window display with mathematical precision. A baker whose wife hangs laundry on different days each week. Hoffmann is 34 years old. Before the war, he was a musicology professor at the University of Munich. He joined the SS in 1939 and discovered he had a talent for patterns, for seeing connections others missed. He's broken 3 resistance networks in Belgium by following not the obvious trails but the negative space, the things that should happen but don't, the rhythms that should be random but aren't. He's been watching Marguerite Dubois for 3 weeks. He's noticed the piano music follows a schedule. He's noticed people pause on the street when she plays, not to listen but to count. He doesn't understand the code yet. But he knows communication when he sees it. And communication means conspiracy. Hoffmann writes orders for surveillance. 6 men to be assigned full-time observation of the music shop and the surrounding blocks. Telephone taps. Mail interception. Photographic surveillance. The machinery of counterintelligence beginning to tighten around people who don't know they're being watched. In the cellar on Rue de la Madeleine, Marguerite Dubois wipes dust from the piano keys and thinks about the war. About her husband, killed at the Isère Canal in May 1940. About her son, 17 years old, hiding in the attic of a farmhouse near Ghent because his student card identified him as suitable for forced labor in Germany. About the British pilot she sheltered last month, his leg broken from a parachute landing, delirious with pain and fear. By
October
autumn
1943,
Dering has treated over 400
Brussels,
cases. Occupied Belgium. 318 successful
cellar
beneath the
outcomes.
music shop on Rue de la
82
Madeleine
failures.
smells of damp stone and paper
He knows
dust.
each failure by number.
Marguerite Dubois
Can
sits at a
recite
worn
them in
upright
sequence.
piano, her fingers moving
Cannot
across
forget.
yellowed keys that haven't
But
been
the
tuned in
successes
18
also
months.
haunt him.
Above her,
Because each
German
prisoner he
boots
saves
on the
returns to
cobblestones,
slave labor.
their rhythm steady and mechanical.
Returns to starvation rations.
She plays Debussy, returns to the machinery
Claire
of the
de Lune.
camp designed to kill them
The same
eventually
piece
anyway.
every
Tuesday evening at
He's not
precisely
saving
7
lives.
o'clock. He's
To anyone
delaying
listening
death
from
the street. It's just
One
another
evening in
music
October,
lesson in
Dering
occupied
sits
Brussels.
in the
infirmary after the last
woman
dressing
teaching
change.
piano
to students who no
The
longer
block is
exist.
quiet.
A small
Most prisoners
defiance
sleeping.
against the silence the
A
occupation
few still
demands.
awake.
But in the
Watching
apartment
him.
across the narrow street,
One speaks.
a pharmacist named
A
Henri
Ukrainian
Valmont stands at
named
his window
Volodymyr,
with a cup of Ersatz
46
coffee
years
growing
old.
cold in his hands. A surgeon before
He's
the
not
war.
listening to the melody.
Now a prisoner
He's
treating
counting
other
the
prisoners
pauses
under
between the
SS
notes.
supervision. This is
You
how
know what
people
we're doing
communicate
here,
when
don't you?
words can kill. Volodymyr's
Belgium
voice
has been
carries
under
no
German
accusation.
occupation
for 3 years. Just tired observation.
The Gestapo maintains
We're keeping the
headquarters at
camp
Avenue
running.
Louise.
Making it
The
more
Sicherheitsdienst,
efficient. The Nazi
the
intelligence
SS used to
service
waste labor
operates
through
from the
medical
palace of
incompetence.
justice. Now
Between
they
them,
waste nothing. They've arrested more than
Because
4,000
of us.
Belgians since 1940.
Dering doesn't answer immediately.
Resistors, Jews,
Can't deny the
communists,
statement.
black marketeers,
Can't
anyone
defend
whose
against it.
existence contradicts the new
Finally,
order. Yes, the prisons overflow. So why do we continue? The interrogation
Because
cells
the
never
alternative
sleep is letting them die faster. In this environment, traditional
enough?
resistance networks have fractured
Dering
and
looks at the
died. Sleeping prisoners. Written messages are
Bandaged
death sentences
wounds.
waiting to be discovered. Healing flesh. Couriers disappear
Bodies
into
that will
Gestapo
wake
headquarters
tomorrow.
and never emerge. Work tomorrow. Radio transmissions
Suffer
last
tomorrow.
minutes before German
But
direction
still
finding
breathe.
trucks triangulate their
It
positions.
has to be.
The Belgian
Volodymyr
underground
nods.
has learned that survival requires
Understands.
invisibility. In Auschwitz, invisibility requires a luxury
silence.
no one can afford. But silence also means isolation. Without choices less terrible than the alternatives operate blind, duplicating efforts, spreads beyond Auschwitz into German traps, unable to coordinate medical officers request copies of Dering's protocols. The paradox is absolute. SS Medical Corps distributes them to concentration camps across occupied Europe, silent and become irrelevant. Other prisoner doctors begin using the methods. Claire de Lune. At Dachau, she pauses for exactly 12 seconds, then begins again using saline irrigation. But this time, she plays 61 successful outcomes. The tempo shifts. A German political hesitation on the fourth measure. 42 prisoners from amputation using the Maggot debridement protocol. To untrained ears, it's just inconsistent playing. At Ravensbrück, prisoner doctors learn the technique. He sets down his coffee cup and reaches for a pencil. Prisoners who become slaves. The music continues for 7 minutes. Weapons. When it stops, Henri has written 3 words on a scrap of paper of genocide. The technique becomes complicit in its own purpose. He burns the paper designed to save lives, watching the ash disintegrate in exploitation. Then created as rebellion against death and rearranges the aspirin bottles in the front window. Dering writes no more reports after December 1943. Then 2 more bottles. Doesn't require them. Across the street, the technique is established above the bakery. Another pair of eyes watches the pharmacy window. Standard practice. The signal passes. Dering's value shifts from innovator to practitioner. No papers exchanged. Wounds. Just bottles and music. The 4-hour precise choreography of people who understand that survival decisions about who lives and who dies. This is October 1943. The Belgian resistance has been operating this way for 7 months on his own capacity for hope. A network of 43 people spread across Brussels brings the Hungarian transports, window displays, hundreds of thousands of vegetables at market stalls, most go directly to the gas chambers from balconies. Some are selected for labor. Enter the camp. The silent enter network. The system Dering helps maintain. They've helped 87 Allied one arrives in Block 21 with a leg wound. They've passed intelligence about German troop movements to 16. London. They've hidden 16 Jewish families. He speaks Hungarian and the Gestapo doesn't know they exist. Doesn't understand but that's where about to change. What this place Gestapo does. Headquarters on Avenue Dering treats the wound. Sturmbannführer Klaus Hoffmann studies protocol. A map of Brussels covered in red saline irrigation. Each pin marks a location where something suspicious has been observed. Zoltan asks when he can go home. Dering has no answer. Anomalies. Stands there. A piano holding blood-stained every Tuesday but has no students. Looking at this child who doesn't know he's already dead. Rearranges his window display with mathematical precision. Just breathing. A baker whose wife hangs laundry on different days each week. He finishes the dressing. Hoffman is 34 years old. The next patient. Before the war, performs the same procedure. He was a musicology professor at the University of Munich. Then he joined the SS in 1939 and discovered he had a talent always for continues for seeing connections others because stopping would mean surrender. He's broken 3 resistance and surrender would mean in Belgium that every life Nazi makes the system with a negative space. The things that should every recovered prisoner makes the rhythms that should be random but aren't. That is impossible. He's been watching Marguerite Du Bois for 3 weeks. The consequence of success the piano music follows is complicity. He's noticed people pause on the street when she plays, not to listen but to count. He doesn't understand the code yet. But he knows communication when he sees it. And communication means conspiracy. Hoffman writes orders for surveillance. 6 men to be assigned full-time observation of the music shop and the surrounding blocks. Telephone taps. Mail interception. Photographic surveillance. The machinery of counterintelligence beginning to tighten around people who don't know they're being watched. In the cellar on Rue de la Madeleine, Marguerite Du Bois wipes dust from the piano keys and thinks about the war. About her husband, killed at the Isère Canal in May 1940. About her son, 17 years old, hiding in the attic of a farmhouse near Ghent because his student card identified him as suitable for forced labor in Germany. About the British pilot she sheltered last month, his leg broken from a parachute landing, delirious with pain and fear. The Red Army enters Auschwitz on January 27, 1945. Occupied Belgium. They find 7,000 prisoners the music shop on Rue de la Madeleine. Dering is not among stone and paper dust. The SS evacuated the camp 9 days at a worn upright piano, forcing 60,000 prisoners into death marches toward Germany. 18 months. Dering marched above her. German boots survived the cobblestones. Their rhythm was liberated by British forces in May 1945 at Neuengamme concentration camp. Claire de Lune. He weighed 47 every Tuesday evening at precisely 94 pounds. To anyone the British military authorities it's just another music lesson in occupied camps Brussels. Full of displaced persons. A woman teaching piano to students who no longer exist. Malnutrition. A small medical emergency to silence the occupation demands. They commissioned Dering as a medical officer. The narrow street. A pharmacist named Henri Valmont stands at his window with a cup of Erzatz coffee to practice medicine in his hands. He's not listening to the Melons camps until 1946.
He's counting the pauses between the notes.
Treated typhus. This is how people communicate when words can kill. Malnutrition. Belgium has been under German occupation for 3 years. Proper instruments. The Gestapo maintains headquarters at Avenue Louise. Never needed the saltwater technique the Nazi intelligence service, but he documents from the Palace of Justice. Wrote a comprehensive medical paper titled They've arrested more than 4,000 Belgians since 1940s. Submitted it to the British Medical Journal in late 1946. Anyone whose existence the journal rejected the new order. Too controversial overflow. Too closely associated with concentration camp medical practices. In this environment, traditional resistance networks from anything connected to Nazi doctors. Written messages are death sentences waiting to be discovered. Dering tried to disappear into Gestapo headquarters and never emerge. The Journal of the American Medical Association before German direction all reject trucks triangulate their positions. For the same reasons. The Belgian underground has learned that survival requires invisibility. He stopped trying and invisibility requires silence. Moved to London. But silence also means as a hospital physician. Without never published the technique. Resistance cells operate blind. Never spoke about Auschwitz. Efforts. Walking into German traps. To become just another doctor treating regular patients or warn each other of danger. But the paradox is stay buried. In 1964, a book was published, silent and become irrelevant by Leon Uris. Marguerite finishes historical fiction about the founding of Israel. She pauses for exactly 12 seconds, subplot involved then begins again. Based loosely on Joseph Mengele. But this time, she plays the opening passage performed medical experiments at Auschwitz with the assistance of a Polish doctor who helped select on the force for death. A description matched details from Dering's time in Block 21. To untrained ears, it's just inconsistent playing. Claimed Henri Beaumont knows better. Portrayed him as a collaborator when he had only been trying to save lives. The music trial lasted 7 weeks. When testimonies from survivors has written 3 words on documents from camp records. Wednesday. Medical journals from 1943 showing Dering's reports. He burns the paper immediately. The jury found against disintegrate in his sink. Awarded him 1 halfpenny. Then he walks to his shop counter and rearranges the aspirin bottles in the front window. A symbolic statement. 3 bottles in a row. Technically libeled. Then a gap. But also, then 2 more bottles. Not wrong about the collaboration. Across the street, in the apartment above the bakery, destroyed during another pair of eyes watches the pharmacy window. He lost his medical license. The signal passes. Lost his position. No words spoken. Lost his reputation. No papers exchanged. He died in 1965. Just bottles and music and the precise choreography of people who understand that survival lives in the spaces. His medical papers were donated to the Imperial War Museum. This is October 1943. Included in the collection, the Belgian resistance has been operating this way for 7 months. Technique. A network of 43 people spread across the case studies, communicating through music, the measurements, window displays, the arrangement he had developed in market stalls, the specific researcher discovered them in 1989. They called themselves working on a project about wartime medical innovations. They've helped 87 Allied airmen escape to England. Recognized their significance. They've passed intelligence about German troop movements in 1992 comparing Dering's technique to modern wound care protocols. And the Gestapo doesn't know they were striking. But that's about the irrigation method matched almost exactly the current medical standard for treating infected wounds. Klaus Hoffmann studies a map of Brussels covered in red corresponded to modern normal saline. Each pin marks a location where something suspicious has been observed. Matched evidence-based wet-to-dry dressing protocols. Just his use of maggot debridement anticipated the resurgence of biosurgery techniques in the 1990s but has no students. He had been right. A pharmacist 30 years before the medical display with mathematical precision. Right about a baker whose wife hangs laundry on different days each week. Because he had used 34 years old to serve an evil system. Before the war, he was a musicology professor at the University of Munich. Had preserved labor for genocide. He joined the SS in 1939 and discovered he had a talent for patterns. Medical historians still debate them. He's broken free resistance networks in Belgium by following not the obvious trails but the negative space, collaborator the things that should happen to preserve the rhythms that should be random but both answers are true. He's been watching Marguerite Dubois for 3 weeks. What remains certain he's noticed the piano music follows a schedule. The impossible trick. He's noticed people pause on the street when she plays with salt, not to listen but to count insects. He doesn't understand military medicine uses it. But he knows the U.S. Army Medical Corps teaches saline and irrigation protocols derived directly from Dering's work. Hoffman writes orders for combat medics carry hypertonic saline solution to be assigned full-time observation of the music shop and the surroundings biosurgery for wound debridement. Telephone taps. The technique has saved thousands of soldiers. Photographic surveillance. Tens of thousands of civilian trauma patients. The machinery of counterintelligence beginning to tighten around people who don't know they're being watched. None of them know they owe partial thanks to a Polish doctor in Auschwitz who refused to accept that gangrene meant certain death. About her husband, War Museum preserves Dering's papers in climate-controlled storage. About her son, researchers can request access, hiding in the attic of a farmhouse the original document because his student card identified him as the hand-drawn diet labor in Germany. Read the precise
About the British
measurements.
pilot she sheltered last
Follow
month.
the logic
His
that
leg broken
transformed
from
desperation into method.
delirious with pain
There's
and
a
fear.
photograph in the collection. One of the few surviving images of Dering from his time in the camp. Taken by an SS medical officer in 1943. Shows Dering standing in Block 21. White coat. Stethoscope. Serious expression. Behind him, visible in soft focus, are rows of bunks. Wounded prisoners. Bandaged limbs. The human cost of occupation and genocide. And in Dering's hands, barely visible if you look closely, a metal bowl. Clean cloth. The simple tools of his impossible trick. The photograph captures a moment. A doctor in hell. Trying to heal. Succeeding. And in that success, becoming complicit in the machinery of death. It's the paradox that haunts every discussion of medical ethics in extreme circumstances. When is preserving life an act of resistance? When does it become collaboration? The answer depends on context. 1943. On intention. Brussels, occupied on Belgium. Consequence. The cellar
all
beneath
the
the music
history
shop
can
on Rue de la
document, but
Madeleine
never fully
smells of
judge.
damp stone and paper
What
dust.
remains is the technique.
Marguerite Dubois sits at a worn-upright piano, the understanding that human tissue wants keys that haven't been tuned in 18 months. That infection can be controlled with the simplest means. German boots pass on the cobblestones, that the impossible sometimes steady and salt water and persistence. She plays Debussy. Dering's papers note one final case. The same January 18, Tuesday evening at precisely 7 o'clock. The day before the evacuation from the street, it's just another number not recorded. In occupied Brussels. Name not given. A woman teaching piano to students who no longer exist. Right hand. A small defiance against the silence the occupation demands. Prognosis. But in the apartment across the narrow street, a pharmacist evacuated before treatment stands at his window with a cup of ersatz coffee growing cold in his hands. Somewhere in the chaos of liberation and displacement, a prisoner walked free with a healing between the notes. Alive. This is how people communicate when words buy time with almost nothing. Belgium has been under German occupation might have survived for 3 years. Might have lived for maintains headquarters at Avenue Might have had children. The grandchildren, the Nazi intelligence service operates from the palace of prevented gangrene. Between them, might have they've arrested more than 4,000 Belgians killed by exposure during the death march. Resistors, shot by retreating SS guards, black marketeers, anyone whose existence contradicts the new camp. The prisons overflow. Unrecorded. The interrogation cells lost never to history like millions of others. In this environment, traditional resistance networks in one fractured and died. Impossibility became temporary messages or death sentences waiting to be discovered. Death became delayed life. Couriers disappear into Gestapo from desperation never proved that healing can occur even where radio transmissions last minutes before German direction-finding trucks triangulate their positions. Not heroism. The Belgian underground has learned that survival requires just the stubborn insistence that knowledge matters. And invisibility requires silence. That skill matters. But silence also means isolation. Even when circumstance corrupts the attempt, resistance cells operate blind. The impossible trick wasn't really into German traps, unable to coordinate. It just required someone willing to question what everyone else accepted as inevitable. The paradox is absolute. During questions, speak and die. Experimenting, remain silent and become irrelevant. Marguerite finishes Claire de Lune, and in saving them, she pauses for exactly 12 seconds. The archives preserve both truths. But this time, the technique plays the opening passage differently. The lives saved and the system served. A hesitation on the fourth measure. Medical students still read his papers. Should be brief. Learn the to untrained ears, it's just apply the methods in modern hospitals where ethics committees and informed consent protect patients from the abuse coffee cup and reaches for a pencil. They learn that a 9% saline solution creates an environment hostile to bacteria. When it stops, Henri has written 3 words on a scrap of paper. Wednesday. That maggots clean wounds more effectively than instruments. He burns the paper immediately. They don't always learn where these ash disintegrate in his sink. In what place? Then he walks to his shop under what and rearranges the aspirin bottles in the front window. From whose desperate innovation? 3 bottles in a row. Maybe that's appropriate. Then a gap. Maybe the knowledge should transcend its origins. Across the street without the apartment away to its birth in a place designed for death watches the pharmacy window. Or maybe forgetting the context signal passing the lesson. No words spoken. Medicine practiced without ethics no papers exchanged. That skill without morality and the precise choreography of people who understand that the survival lives in the spaces requires constant vigilance against systems. This is October 1943 exploitation. The Belgian resistance has been operating this way for 7 Auschwitz. A network of 43 people spread across Brussels. Both are true. Communicating through music. Both window displays. The arrangement can be separated from market stalls. The specific day's laundry hangs from balconies. The prisoners he
They
saved
call
worked.
themselves Le Réseau Silencieux.
The knowledge he created endured.
The silent network.
And the question remains.
They've helped 87 Allied airmen escape medical innovations born in moral
They've
catastrophe.
passed intelligence about German troop movements to London.
Is to remember everything.
They've hidden 16 Jewish
the
families.
technique and its origin.
And the Gestapo
The
doesn't
lives
know they
saved
exist.
and the context that required
But that's
such
about
desperate
to
measures.
change.
The
At Gestapo
healing in the
headquarters on Avenue Louise,
to use the
Sterling
knowledge.
Klaus Hoffman
To
studies a
preserve
map
the
of
skill.
Brussels covered in red pins.
To acknowledge the cost.
Each pin marks a
And to
location
ensure
where
that
something
medicine never
suspicious has
again
been operates in
observed.
places where healing
Not
serves evil
concrete
purposes.
evidence.
That's
Just
what
patterns.
remains.
Anomalies.
Knowledge purchased at impossible price.
A piano teacher who plays every
Technique
Tuesday
born from
but has no
unthinkable
students.
circumstance. A
And
pharmacist
the
who
understanding
rearranges
that even
his
the
window
smallest
display
advantage
with mathematical
human
precision.
bodies will to heal can
A
mean the
baker
difference
whose
between
wife
life and
hangs
death.
laundry on different days each
Salt
week.
water.
Hoffman
Clean
is
cloth.
34 years old.
Persistence.
Before the war,
He
he
was
was
a
a
musicology
musicology
that
professor
proved
at the
nothing is
University
truly
of Munich.
impossible
When someone refuses
He joined
to
the
accept
SS
defeat.
in 1939
During
and
his
discovered
legacy
he
he
had
lives in
talent
every
for
modern
patterns,
wound care
for seeing
protocol.
connections others missed.
In every field hospital.
He's broken 3 resistance
in every
networks
emergency
in
room
Belgium
where
where
doctors
doctors
treat
treat
obvious
infected
trails
tissue
of the
with
negative
saline
space,
irrigation
the
and
things that should
biological
happen but
debridement,
don't, the rhythms that should
lives
be random
saved by
but aren't.
knowledge created in history's
He's been
darkest
watching
places.
Marguerite Dubois for 3
The
weeks.
paradox endures.
He's noticed the piano
The
music
questions
follows
remain
a schedule.
unanswered.
He's
But the
noticed
technique
people
works.
pause on the street when she plays,
Still.
not to listen but to count.
Always.
He doesn't
As long as
understand the
doctors
code yet,
remember that healing begins
but
with
he knows
refusing to
communication
accept that
when
death
death
is
is
inevitable.
and
Even when
communication
everything
means
suggests
conspiracy.
otherwise.
Hoffman writes
Especially
orders
then.
for surveillance. 6 men to be assigned full-time observation of the music shop and the surrounding blocks. Telephone taps. Mail interception. Photographic surveillance. The machinery of counterintelligence beginning to tighten around people who don't know they're being watched. In the cellar on Rue de la Madeleine, Marguerite Dubois wipes dust from the piano keys and thinks about the war. About her husband, killed at the Isère Canal in May 1940. About her son, 17 years old, hiding in the attic of a farmhouse near Ghent because his student card identified him as suitable for forced labor in Germany. About the British pilot she sheltered last month, his leg broken from a parachute landing, delirious with pain and fear.